Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Shakespearean Shrew. I am your Shakespearean Shrew, Karen Feiner, lover of all things bard. This podcast is a decorum-be-damned entrance into understanding Shakespeare's stages because there are many of them, and all the players on it. We are at OSP in the Paseo in the Mermaid Tavern with actors Bell Reeves, who is playing Anne Page in Our Merry Wives, and Kit Rasmussen, who is playing Lady Fenton. So thank you both so much for being here. It was a debacle this morning, but we're here. We're getting it done. Here we go. So for Merry Wives, you two play the ingenues, like the main. I'm gonna edit that part out.
We're the lovers for this.
You're the lovers. Thank you. I was like, the words are not. So you are the main lovers, really, because we have husband and wives who are dealing with relationship issues, less lovers than like trying to thwart one another. You are the real lovers of this production. And one of Shakespeare's healthiest relationships, actually, I think. Although you have played another relationship that was a good relationship, Belle, when you played Lady Macbeth in Macbeths. That one didn't end well for you, though.
It really does.
And this is a comedy that all ends well and ends wrapped up pretty nicely, and everyone goes to dinner. Like,
yeah,
weirdly not traumatic ending. But the choices that director Chris Cuss made in terms of casting and producing the show, but also the choices that Shakespeare has made, allows this to be a great conversation about gender on the stage and gender in society, because let's be honest, it's a big conversation that has been taking place lately. So for Anne Page, you are a very sought after young woman.
Thank you.
3 suitors, right? A French doctor who's got all the money. And then you've got Lucas Slender, who is landed, which means he's got the titles, right? But not the money or the personality or
Bless
anything
his
of
heart.
that. Bless his heart. Or any game whatsoever.
He's doing his best.
And then we have Lady Fenton, right? Fenton. And so that actually is different than Shakespeare's original, right? Originally, it was, another of our master Fenton, and that got changed in the play. So why do you think Chris made that decision? And what does that do for a play that already, gender bends historically, because all women in Elizabethan England were played by men dressed as women. So what does that do to add a layer of complexity to the play, the relationships, and who the audience votes for?
That is a great question. Do you remember why?
I think part of it was that he wanted to show a queer relationship on stage, and he wanted it to play into the larger themes of acceptance that are shown in the rest of Merry Wives. The foreigners get brought into the fold. Falstaff, who has spent the entire time causing problems and getting made fun of for it and dumped in a river about it. He gets welcomed back to dinner. The couples get back together. It's just everyone in Windsor, no matter who they are, is loved and accepted. And I think he wanted to add just another layer onto that.
What is so important about having queer relationships on the stage? Why is that such an important thing that we've now started slowly to bring to the stage more?
Yeah. Well, they exist.
Art
groundbreaking. Yeah. And if you can see it, you can be it. It's good to have like one of the healthiest relationships in the Shakespearean canon be queer for our purposes. It's awesome.
And I mean, again, if you think about it, at the time, it was also, a queer relationship because Anne Page was played by a young boy or a young man. So yeah, we're just keeping it going.
Yeah, it's tradition.
It's tradition at this point. Because a lot of the things I've seen, it's June, it's Pride, and it's Oklahoma. And so some of the comments, the things that I've seen have been, well, why do they have to have a parade? Why do they have to have a month? Why do they have to do everything so publicly and, rub it in our faces? And again, I think this is part of that conversation, right? It's not rubbing it in anybody's face, right? If you're holding hands with your significant other, are you like, look at me, like we're holding hands?
We hold hands and we use that to like punch the nearest person.
Yes.
Yeah.
People see it as an attack. And why, again, I think that's why I keep coming back to that question of why it's so important to normalize it, right? To show that it's not some kind of an aggressive moment, but something that is, like you said, they're real. These relationships exist, right? And so, and again, just to add another layer, in case we haven't added enough layers. So, Kit, you're transmasculine, right?
Yes.
And so Kit, you are playing a role that was intended for a man,
Yes.
right? And then was switched and is now played as a woman,
Yes.
as a transmasculine actor.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And that's been, Chris has been great, and Jason's been great working with the role and the identity of the character and the presentation of the character, and kind of allowing like me to be myself through it. So you can see Fenton on stage. She's pretty masculine leaning. And so I thought that was really fun. I did make fun of Chris a little bit at the table read, and I said, you had this whole audition room, you picked the one trans dude and said, you're going to play a lesbian.
It's called having range.
It's called having range.
I love it because, yeah, my brain went, wait, we're doing, okay, let's go.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
But yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And it pulls to the forefront gender, which of course, Shakespeare mocked the ever-loving shit out of gender, right? Everything for Shakespeare was, how can we play with gender? How can we mess with these roles? We were talking before about Sir Ian McKellen doing the first completely trans, non-binary 12th Night, which makes perfect sense if you've ever seen or read 12th Night, because holy gender bending, where it doesn't matter, right? The relationships aren't based on gender. The relationships at the end, with Viola, it's kind of like, oh, please be both. I need you to be Cesario because I love Cesario, but I also, understand the social construct and need for Viola. So I'm going to need you to be both, right? So you just stay in those clothes, but be both people. And so it's really very interesting. I love that conclusion because you're just like, okay, like he fell in love with Cesario. So with gender, again, how does Shakespeare allow us to play with that idea? Because again, he's the OG at playing with gender. And why is it now something that people are so hesitant to play with? Well, are they? Again, I feel like there's a divide. Mm-hmm. There's the more liberal leaning towards it's a societal construct, like we created this. Blue doesn't mean boy.
Yeah.
That was just something that was created, versus the idea of, this is the role. This is who you are. This is how you should be. My nephew gets his toenails done. He loves going to get his nails done. But his father was like, am I okay with that? I guess I'm okay with that. Okay, fine. We're fine with it. But it took him a second. So how does the theater, how does Shakespeare allow us to play with identity?
I'm a huge fan of recontextualization. I love yapping about taking the bones of something we know so well and modifying it and kind of like shaking that coconut tree to see what falls out. And so I don't know, I like whenever we explore Shakespeare through the lens of gender, because I feel like we learn so many things about society, about ourselves, and it's just a more interesting and rich performance to be a part of and to see. I love it. I think it's really cool.
I think the most interesting part of it is playing with if you gender bend a character, how does that affect their relationships with the other character, because they are written into such strict social roles and gender roles. So Mistress Page's line, "No, I seek you a better husband," takes on an entirely different meaning if you're talking to a feminine presenting character now, which is something that we ran into in rehearsals is, this sounds a lot harsher now than we meant it to because of who you're because of the person that you're talking to. And so that's always really interesting to me, is if you change this, what appears to be a fundamental part of this character, how does that domino affect everything else in the play? And I think you can learn a lot about that character, about different characters, about the relationships between them using that.
Absolutely. How did playing, acting affect your identities as you have progressed through the years? Take all the time you want, because remember, editing is it's the best.
Do you want to go first?
Sure.
Especially because, like, your family, it's like the Von Trapp family singers. Like, there's like there's a generational acting thing going on.
Yeah, we've been on stage forever, which is fun. And I think for me, I started identifying a lot more, especially with masculine characters. And everyone talks about, especially in like collegiate theater, like connect to your piece, find the bits of yourself that you can put into this and use that to inform your choices. And I'm working with these pieces. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. And I did that for years and just trying to figure out what this was. And then I got a piece from a play called Lincoln-esque, which is a great political piece. And I looked at that and I went, oh, that would make sense. Okay. So I feel like rather than my identity shaping the characters, I feel like a lot of theater and the things that I've done have helped me shape and find my own identity, which is super fun.
So cool.
Character development.
Yeah, I feel pretty similarly in the way of like, I feel like the roles that I've played have kind of like shaped myself. I'm neurodivergent. So I feel like I really was pulled towards the theater because you have a script, and you have a situation.
Sorry, hold on one second. Okay, are we good? Yes, we're good. Carry on.
Woo! Baller. You have a script, you have a situation, you have your characters, you kind of know the expectations and the outcome of a scene. And I feel like it kind of helped teach me a lot more about socializing and personal dynamics. And just like I feel like I've like learned a lot of stuff. Like I feel like I gravitate mostly towards the theater and towards a lot of these pieces because I like pieces and works that like teach me things about like our life and ourselves, and kind of like, yeah, self-discovery through being on the stage, self-discovery through performance for others. Yeah, that's my ramble.
No, that's a great ramble. So I think, because for me, I used to be kind of a chameleon when I was younger. I was always hiding in roles because I didn't want to deal with who I was. And so being around the two of you who are very secure in yourselves and your identity, I think this is why I sucked as an actor.
Oh,
because
be nice.
No, it's okay. Because it was something that I was trying to hide in and lose myself in other characters, as opposed to connecting myself to those characters and finding myself more through those characters. And I think that was why when I got to teaching and I had the opportunity to teach, that's where I started to kind of be like, oh, this is, yeah, okay. Like, I couldn't take the roles on because I didn't have any of myself in them. It was just like, all right, let me try to be this character, right? And I was really good at the like bitchy lesbian. So
we all have our types.
I don't know why, but yeah. So I think it's just interesting to hear from both of you the way you pull pieces of other characters to help strengthen your own identity. And again, it makes perfect sense. This is why I am not an actor. But it's also something that I think is really important for people to understand when we're considering what it means to play and what acting really is. Because it is a very serious thing. Art should be taken seriously, but the creation of art, I feel like shouldn't be taken seriously. That's where you play, you try things. I was telling Michelle, we got to come last night to see Merry Wives, which was amazing. But we had gotten to come to rehearsal 2 weeks prior. And we were like, it's changed so much. I mean, the mics also help. But just the actions, the characters you've all developed over the course of those weeks. How does that development map in terms of like the relationships between you and your characters on and off the stage? How does that development shift from show to show?
I feel like we've been really fortunate to have such a yes and cast. It's like we come to this place to like to just to be free and to play and to live in those little moments that aren't necessarily like scripted, and to delve into those more, because that's like the life of it all. My favorite part about Shakespeare almost isn't even like the lines sometimes. It's like what we say. They say Shakespeare has no subtext, and it's like, well, I mean,
we'll add our own.
Yeah, when in performance, like it does, like it can be so layered, and yeah, I just love it.
Yeah, and I also love that. So, like, you get the script, you memorize the lines, you memorize the blocking, and that's the bones of it. And then you come in every night and just play. And are there moments that need to be negotiated? Sure. And, you find someone backstage and you're like, hey, I've got an idea. Do you want to try it? And again, this cast is just 100% committed to the bit. So every time I found something, I'm like, hey, can we tweak this? Yes, absolutely. Let's give it a go. Or, smaller things, just finding things on stage. You handing me your flower.
Mm-hmm.
Because Belle has been in that last bit. kissing my hand or blowing me a kiss and putting it in my hand or something. And so then I'm left with this like, oh, there's a kiss there. But last night she pulled one of the flowers out of her hair and handed it to me. And all of a sudden now I have this tangible reminder of this woman that I love who's just left me alone on stage. And I'm like, oh, so I put it in my lapel and I wore it for the rest of the show. I'm like, this is just precious. And it's just moments like that that just show up organically sometimes that just make every night better and better and better.
I love that. I love that that was just like a thing because I love that part. I thought that was so nice. And I was like, oh, that's different. Like, that's a change. That's so cool.
Thank you. I love the amount of like flower accents I have on my costume. I don't know if this was something intentional that Jason, our costume designer, did or not, but it kind of, for me and Paige, is like a garden. I have like flowers on my skirts. I have my cute little flowers in my bun. But it also brings to mind the image of like curation. Like gardens must be upkept. They're meant to look pretty, meant to do certain things. And if they're not, then things get weeded out. And I kind of feel like that relates a lot to Anne and this kind of like queer identity that we've crafted for her in this show of like is like my love for Fenton like seen as a weed by my parents. And they're trying to like cross-pollinate me with different plants. But like maybe like some people like, what do they say? Like it's like dandelions are like a weed, but they're like kids love them. You make a wish, like they're beautiful and they pop up everywhere, like relentlessly. And I feel like that's kind of like our love. Like they may try to weed it from our garden or plant different things, but at the end of the day, like you'll always be my dandelion. That's so cute.
That's precious. Oh, now I need a sign that says you'll always be my dandelion.
Oh.
It's a great tag.
Get that on some merch.
Write that down.
So that is a great example of a moment that changed. Have there been any moments that surprised you, whether that's audience engagement or anything that has come from other members of the cast that have kind of surprised you in the moment and you've played off of?
I love just looking and seeing what Lance Marsh, our Falstaff, does every night. Are you kidding me? I feel like I'm always on my toes in the most exciting way. The looks I get, the little gestures, anything is just funny. We just yes and each other.
Yes.
It's delightful. What about you?
Yeah, I love that. I love shows with audience participation because nobody reacts the same way to me coming up and saying, hey, what's over there? And stealing their drink from them. Just wandering around with it for a minute. Some people are confused. Some people are like, oh my God, they took my drink. Yeah, it's fun. It's just a little bit of unpredictability in the rest of everything that is usually so staged and metered. It's so much fun. I love it. And I love that we're pulling audience members up on the stage and the mum budget bit is hilarious. It's never the same. There's just more of that organic, I've lost the word for it. Just the magic that happens.
Yeah, it was very, I loved all of those aspects. This one, you really brought the level of audience engagement so high. And so when you're talking about stealing the drink, that was as your other role, because you both have other roles other than the lovers, where you both present as masculine characters. You've almost got like an Oliver Twist thing going on.
Yeah.
But so as like Falstaff's kind of minions.
Yeah, we are cronies.
Cronies.
And so let's just add that to our mix of the madness that is happening. So for you, we're actually for both of you, it's kind of a hair up, hair down transformation, literally. And so in terms of the physicality of that, putting your hair up, right? You have yours under a hat because yours is
my large hat.
It's got a lot to contain in there.
Multitudes.
but you kind of have like the top knot and then the down and either to the side, or I don't know if you changed that up or not ever, but hair down, hair up. How does that physicality signal some kind of transformation for you?
So for Robin, I just throw on my silly little cap, and that's how I feel. I feel like a silly little boy. I'm just literally like, okay, so when we're introduced to Falstaff earlier in the canon with Shakespeare's works, and we kind of talked about it, and in that earlier work, Robin is boy, but then in Merry Wives, I get to have a name.
How nice.
What a treat. I mean, come on. And so, yeah, I feel like I put on the hat, I cover my Anne Page bun with all my flowers, and then I get to like move a lot more freely, physically, and throughout the space of like this play, like as a messenger. I get to do things as Robin that I'm like not allowed to do as Anne. If you think about it, Anne's in like 3 scenes, if you count like the end, whenever we come in. Yeah. It's like 3 scenes throughout the whole play. And she's very restricted in what she does, aside from like our scene whenever we get back from intermission. But Robin, I get to like skip around, I get to hop around, I get to, this sounds so silly, but I get to sit with like my legs open, which would be out of the period, and just like joke around a lot more physically than I get to do with Anne, who mostly has to do like the soft smile and like, oh, ha, 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 like chuckle at all these crazy men that want me so bad, and I just want to be with my girlfriend. The heteronormativity is stifling, but when it's Robin, I'm free. Like I just get to do like literally whatever I want.
Oh, that says so much.
It really does, right?
I was like, oh wow, we could definitely unpack that one for a while.
We could, right?
Do you want to add to that, or do you want to?
Pistol is a lot closer to the type of character that I normally play. I am not an ingenue by typecast, and so it's almost foreign to me to be soft and sweet and gentle. Like I just want to be a menace.
You are.
And so it's fun to run around with Denton and with David, and we're just bouncing off of each other and off of Lance and everything else in the scene. And it's just it's high energy. It's a lot of fun. And then to switch from that, literally let my hair down and become this softer, more gentle creature that is Fenton. It's a very strong dichotomy, but it's one that I've really enjoyed playing.
I like the fact that it sounds like both of you putting your hair down, it's almost antithesis to the actual meaning of it, because it seems like both of you are more constrained in that position of forced femininity. Where it's like, okay, I have to be this way. I have to, have these mannerisms. I can't sit with my legs open because God forbid. Right?
I mean,
God forbid women do anything.
Sorry. Yeah. Illegal.
Yeah.
Somber in the club.
Too real. Too real.
Yeah.
Oh, the forced laugh of the things we're dealing with right now. Oh my God.
Yeah, I love it. I don't love it.
But I think what you're saying points to a very important element of our society that is still very prevalent, right? The forced roles that we should take, that we should portray and be elements that we should have. So I was on the crew team when I was in college, and my first semester I got home and my mom just started crying. And I was like, what is happening right now? And she's like, your shoulders are so big.
With joy, right?
Yeah, not with joy. But again, and for me, it took a while for me to get past that that idea of I can be strong and that's okay. And one of my students last semester wrote a whole paper where she was like, I'm struggling to be okay with my muscles as like a part of femininity. And again, hearing about your struggles with playing these roles where it's like, all right, I have to be soft now. I have to be a delicate freaking flower, right? And so how do we as society get past those constructs? Can we? Right? Because how do you play a role without pushing yourself into those constraints, right? Oh, I've got to be the ingenue. I've got to be the feminine character. I've got to do this. Immediately, we're forced back into the same roles that society has put us in for too long. So I think art is one of the ways that we break out of roles, break boxes, start blurring lines. And I think, what we had, a healthy freaking relationship, on stage that is a queer relationship, well, I'll be damned, right?
Right.
So I think that is one way that we're starting to break down some of these constructs. But then in the same play, you're still dealing with a lot of those same elements of how would a woman behave in 1920s, because that's who I've got to personify, right? Can we as a society, is it possible for us to start pushing past these boundaries? Or is it something that is just going to be something that we have to keep blurring, but we can never break out of? You have thoughts? Again, this is just opinion. I'm not asking for a...
No. Yeah, well, I hope we can break it down. I mean, that would be the best. I manifest. I feel like definitely the visibility of seeing like relationships like ours and also like concepts of the play. So like Merry Wives, right? Our dramaturg, Sophia, was talking with us about like the women identifying characters in this play like really drive it along. I mean, this is a play that kind of deviates from what was like societal norm in like the 15 to 1600s, It's very like women driven. We've got our two merry wives, our mistresses that are playing games basically on the patriarchy and with the patriarchy's expectation of them. Like Master Ford is like, oh, my wife is definitely going to cheat on me. This other man's looking at her, like not trusting her, definitely projecting his own image of like what he expects of a wife, his wife.
Yes, and his own insecurities.
And his own insecurities. But kind of in a way, I feel like with how like female dominant, how much autonomy the women in this show have, is kind of why we don't get a Romeo and Juliet out of Anne and Fenton. I was thinking about, this play was written after Romeo and Juliet in the canon. So I feel like if you're going into this as like a Shakespearean audience, you're like, oh my God, we've got our star-crossed lovers. They're not allowed to be together. Like, I know this is going to end poison. But it deviates from that. And I think it's because of the amount of power that the women in this show have. Like Anne does run away with Fenton, and she is able to like craft her own ending out of this narrative that's been written for her by everybody else like in her life. So I think I kind of missed the main point of the question.
No.
But I'm gonna leave it there.
I love it. I think it also connects to like, you have a strong disapproving mother, an overreaching mother, but strong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, that idea of what do we do? What do we change? I think that some of it is generational. Like, we teach, we learn, we see, and we do, right? Why is Anne willing to run off against both of her parents' wishes and do what she wants to do? It doesn't seem like the apple falls too far from the tree. But yeah, so I think that again, that might be, you might have answered it.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that's a great answer. You know, and push back, keep pushing those boundaries, and not being afraid to do things outside of what our society dictates as norm. Almost stupid.
Normative rocks. Well, not like actually, but like your wording rocked.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that a lot of times we're driven by the expectations of parents, of course, society at large. You've been awake for far too long.
I'm so sorry.
No, you are absolutely fine. I'm just thinking that you have had like 3 hours of sleep.
And he's still cooking.
And there is nowhere I'd rather be.
That's the nicest thing ever. But yes, so I feel like the questions that I am struggling to answer, we're all struggling to answer, especially right now with kind of a push from one side for acceptance, and for more than that, for understanding, and, you know, on the other side, the push back that we've had to reassign structure. Because God forbid things don't make sense. God forbid there be chaos. Because as humans, we want things to be orderly. So in a play, how do you fight the constructs between the order, right? Because you've got to say the lines. You've got to do certain things and convey certain aspects because it's in the bones. Like you said, they're the bones of the play. You mentioned subtext. So how do you bring that to the bones? Bring that aspect of disorder to the order of a play?
Once you know the bones, you know how to break them. And
So violent.
Well, you know, but it's like that. It really, really is. Like, you have a scene right between like two characters, and where you deviate from expectation is really where you live. It's where you really say something. And so that's what's cool about doing classical theater, like 400 years later, is that like where we differentiate is where we make our stand.
It's kind of funny the way Belle described it, because sometimes you have to re-break a bone to set it so it heals properly. And that kind of like the feel that I get. Like, you're resetting the bone. Like, make it.
Oh, we're resetting the societal bones?
I love that. Break them and reset them.
Break more bones.
Break them.
Break them.
That's why they say break a leg.
You're so right.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
On that specifically?
Go where you want. Take it where you will.
No, I'll let you ask your questions.
Okay. What's your favorite part? So of this particular show, what has been your favorite part of the show?
The dance. Absolutely.
Aww. That's true. I love that part too. I was gonna say honestly, like I think my favorite part of the show is getting to like, I feel like we like flesh out and deepen like our relationship every time we like do the scenes like more and more, which is like, I love that. We have like certain little things, like Kit has this amazing playlist for Fenton, and like I sent him a song the other day. It was Rude by Magic. The like, I want to marry your daughter. Like, I'm gonna marry her anyway. Marry that girl. Don't copyright us, YouTube. But I said that to him, and he was like, "I've already got that on a playlist." And,
It's in the playlist.
and
Yes.
like, what are the other songs too?
I've got Where's the Girl from the Scarlet Pimpernel.
Love.
I have Rewrite the Stars from The Greatest
Oh
Showman.
my gosh, yes. Okay.
Right, it just fits.
It does fit.
What was the other one that I said? I was singing it last night.
I know, and it was good. Was it from Epic, or I know we were talking about Epic?
I know we
for
were
some
talking about
reason.
Epic, but I don't think it was from Epic.
It's the fun stuff. I think my favorite part of the show is getting to like just be like in love with like Kit, you know? I think it's great. Whenever we started the read, I was really in my craft era. And so I made this cute little bracelet with like letter beads and like the little clay beads. And it had like my initials on it for Anne Page. And then on the other side, it had some like heart beads. So it could be like switched around. So nobody had to see the initials, but it was still like a cute little love bracelet. And I think like making the characters our own and like kind of finding like the really fun places to like play and like have it come to life. Like, I think that's just like my favorite part, probably.
Yeah, I wore that bracelet to every single rehearsal.
I can't decide if you guys are cuter on stage or off stage. So, your favorite parts are both when you're playing the characters that are more restricted, but in a moment that allow you to be more free on the stage, is what you're telling me.
It's funny that way.
Break the bones.
Break the bones.
Break the bones, we heal them. And I think that's what you're doing. I think that's what your relationship does, is it starts to heal things that have been broken. And that's why I wanted so badly to have you on the podcast, because I was like, we need to have this conversation. And so I'm really glad that we got to. If you're talking to, because I know this is your first production at OSP, right?
Yes.
We're delighted to have you.
I am delighted to be here.
Thank you for being here.
Belle, obviously, we've talked before. I've seen you in many a production. But with all of that, in terms of, my mind is blank. I had it and it just went away. Give me 1 second. Think. Where was that question going? I think I've had a lot of statements today that have randomly devolved or evolved into questions.
And I love all of them.
Oh, okay, start to think, why were you asking
Um,
I've been around a lot. I've seen a lot of things.
Oh, real quick. Evolution by
Okay, we'll go there first and come back. So one of the main conflicts for you all, especially as our lovers, is the fact that mom and dad say no. Mom and dad are not accepting of your relationship. Sound familiar to anybody? So go figure. 400 plus years later, the story remains the same. How do we see that relationship evolve, or do we see the relationship evolve between the parents and, child and child's wife?
So Chris was kind of, whenever we were exploring the Anne Page Fenton relationship, Chris, our director, was very much like, my parents, the Pages, aren't opposed to it out of like a homophobia. What we have cooking is like a Boston marriage, is kind of like what Chris kind of described us as, like, originally.
Oh my God, they were roommates?
And they were roommates. Yeah, and so it was more of a desire of like them thinking like Fenton just like wasn't the right person for Anne. And we see that kind of with like Master Pages kind of talking like, Fenton's like hung around the prince, like Fenton knows too much, like just not the right fit. But it wasn't necessarily like outward homophobia that kept us from being together. Mm-hmm. And I think at the end, once my parents saw that like, it's like a if you can't beat them, join them situation. Because I mean, the women in this play are so like headstrong and forward. It's either like get with it or go away. And I think that's kind of like personally how I saw it evolve as the daughter in that relationship. Do you have?
I know you summed it up pretty well. It was, I think, going back to like normalizing queer relationships and, you know, putting those things on the stage in the way that we are. The resolution of that conflict was really comforting. To just, you know, even though it's not necessarily, we don't approve of Fenton because she's a woman, it still just warms my cold little heart to have both Master and Mistress Page come up and shake my hand and say, you know, Lady Fenton, God give thee joy. You're like, that's, you know, we accept it. We accept you with our daughter. And I feel like that's, along with the relationship, I think it's really important to show that side of it. Is that, you know, not only is it okay for you to accept yourself, is that other people can accept you too. It's not always going to be hard and scary. You will find people that love you and want you in their life.
I love that.
I got really sappy.
I love it.
It was beautiful.
It was.
Because at the end of the day, that's what everybody wants, right? Like,
Even Falstaff gets accepted at the end of the day in this one, and he's like the master villain of this book production. So yeah, it's definitely a play about acceptance. I think you are absolutely spot on.
And that's so interesting because I know you're writing that awesome like book about like the outsiders in Shakespeare's works. And it's really interesting on how it feels like society sometimes tends to be a system that's based on exclusion in a way. So we're all outsiders. And at the end of this play, you really see like the outsiders of society along with the insiders who are outsiders in their own way come together and choose each other and like become a community. And I think that's like really what it's all about.
Absolutely. I think As You Like it's interesting because for that one, the outsiders kind of became the insiders.
Yeah.
And everybody who was on the inside was like, we want to be on the outside.
There's some of that.
This is the cool place to be.
To the woods.
Yeah, to the woods. This place, it's kind of a cacophony of outsiders. And you two are kind of the pinnacle outsiders where you're both playing strong women who refuse to accept the role that you're supposed to play. And obviously, Kit, yours is more outwardly clear. Like you said, you show up kind of in a suit, right? And we're like, oh, okay, got it, right? Whereas you present the demure, female perspective and then kind of push back against it. And that's what makes you work, is that you're both fighting, the thing, and that's what, fighting the thing. That was so articulate.
I love to fight the thing. I'm all about fighting
Fight
the thing.
Fight the power.
Fight the thing.
But you're both fighting the constructs that you're given. And it's what allows you to succeed in your relationship. And then we see the other people give into your strength. So your parents are like, well, can't fight this anymore, let's just say, good job. Like,
Yeah.
you're happy, great, carry on.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just beautiful.
It is. It is. And that acceptance, I kind of feel like, is what makes Merry Wives a comedy rather than a tragedy. Because, we know Shakespeare has a formula for his comedies, and one of those is, a wedding at the end, a marriage at the end. And, if my parents don't accept us, that becomes a tragedy, really fast. In more ways than one.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So I remembered my question from earlier, but what would you say to people who are putting themselves in specific roles, trying out for specific roles? Kit, when you auditioned, I guess for both of you, when you auditioned, did you audition for a specific role? Did you audition just generally for Merry Wives, and you were like, put me where you will? How did that go, and what are your thoughts in terms of putting yourself out there for roles and accepting roles that maybe aren't in what you consider your wheelhouse?
Yeah, so I personally just went to the audition that we had for the shows this season, and then I didn't even really know that Chris was going to go and make Fenton, Lady Fenton, up until got the callback email, and I was like, oh, this is so interesting and cool. And so I was really excited just to like discover dramaturgically what it meant, how it was going to go, the vision and the idea. What about you?
I also just showed up to the audition, and it's like, this is the first professional show that I've done. And it's also the first show that I've done where I showed up to the audition intentionally presenting masculine. And like, the piece that I brought was Proteus from Two Gentlemen of Verona, which I love that. That's staying in my repertoire forever. But I showed up, and that is the most connected I have ever felt in an audition. I was like, oh, this is me. This is great. And then I was called back for Fenton, and I remember I was so thrilled because, well, I didn't know Chris was going to gender bend the character. But I'm looking at this callback list. I'm like, these look like a bunch of girl names. And then there's me, and I show up. I'm like, this is interesting. And then he talks in the callback about that he wants to gender bend the character. And I'm like, okay, I'm here. We're going to roll with it. And then he emailed me and offered me the part. And I was like, hey, just so you're aware, in case this messes with your vision. And he, sent back immediately. He's like, no, that's totally fine. And I'd love to, I'd love to see your take on it. I'd love to play with that for you to make it affirming and so that you can explore that. And I was like, I'm so down. I'm so excited. Let me at it. So that was really fun. It was a really, really great experience.
I wonder if Chris knew. I wonder at what point Chris knew that this was the relationship that he was going to build and create in this production. Because I've had so many directors who just didn't know until they knew. Like, they just saw something that they just loved in that person and were like, that, I'm putting that on stage. That's what's going to happen. And then he was like, things just got really confusing. Let's do this. But yeah, I'm going to have to ask Chris when he knew. Okay, so you said this is your first show, first professional show. You're taking the LSAT.
Yes. In August.
Crazy.
So you obviously are going into a career that will hopefully still include you on the stage, because we would like you to stay on the stage, but also taking on a different aspect of not the theatrical world, but the kind of, but the entertainment world.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us why, what the transition is between you being on the stage and you wanting to take on that position as an entertainment lawyer. What are you pursuing?
So Bell's like, yes, I'm listening. I'm here.
Say it.
So one of my strongest moral compasses for as long as I've been alive has been to stand up for other people and to make sure that everyone has a voice, make sure that everyone has a seat at the table. And I found a lot of that in theater. And then I think that going into the legal field will give me another avenue to do that, and to stand up for people and make sure that everyone is accepted and that everyone is welcomed. And we're pulling themes back in here. It's everything is
Yes,
a circle.
we are.
Everything is a circle. And I watched really closely with the SAG strikes and the writers' strikes, and how hard people worked to make sure that everyone had a voice. And that's when I kind of locked in. I'm like, oh, that's how that fits together. Is I can use my voice, I can use my platform to make sure that everyone else has one. And I like arguing, so right?
So how does your experience on the stage help set you up, you think, for a career in that and the other side of the entertainment industry, in protecting other people's voices? What has it allowed you to see, to notice as you're kind of going into and doing your studies?
So I think the interpersonal skills are the biggest part of it, because you can sit and learn paperwork and legalese and processing and formatting and all of that, like cut and dry stuff, all day long. But if you're not in the space with the people that you're intending to protect and be in community with, it's not going to work. Just because you're an outsider. You're someone coming in and saying, hey, I can help you. I think.
Maybe.
Maybe. Hopefully. And I feel like having started and having a foundation in this industry and being in community with the people, and I can see what the problem is, or what the problems are, what challenges people are facing, and then to go back around, learn the other side of it, and say, okay, now I know what the problem. I'm intimately familiar with these challenges, and now I have the support and the know-how to come in and try to lift you up and fix them.
Period.
I know. I was like, can I just say Anne Page and Fenton forever? Like,
Five ever.
All right. Well, I am so excited. I think you will do amazing, and you will help so many people. I think what you are doing right now is already putting on stage again healthy queer relationships that surpassing a lot of the heteronormative relationships. So go on that one. But also, I think I'm so excited you're going to continue to fight for other people's voices. So thank you both so much for coming and doing this podcast. I'm sorry for the technical issues. Merry Wives, this is the last weekend. So come to Merry Wives and see this amazing relationship just transform in front of you. It is your opportunity to see the chaos that is Merry Wives, and as you've seen or heard in our last two podcasts, the chaos that emerges amongst the other characters. Gotta love it. But also, it's your chance to win tickets for the next production, which is Love's Labors, which opens in August. So it is a summer full of chaotic relationships, all the fun, and breaking molds wherever we can, because that's just how we roll. But I look forward to seeing you at Merry Wives and Love's Labors. Just remember, all the world's a stage, and you too can be a shrew. Bye.